Hey, my name's Enda Murray. I'm the director of the Irish Film Festival. I'm delighted to welcome Gabriel Clarke, writer and director of Finding Jack Charlton. Gabriel, a very welcome to Australia.
Great to see you. I hope all's well, and thanks for having me on.
So tell us, Gabriel, what inspired the writing of Finding Jack Charlton for you?
Well, I'd done a little bit of work as a football journalist with Jack during the 90s when he was working with ITV, and obviously I knew as a football fan for my life of the career of this man. But it was speaking to Andy Townsend, who was his captain at some point when he was Ireland manager, and Andy I know well as well about Jack's life and career a few years ago, that I thought that really Jack's wider impact beyond football hadn't really been done in a documentary, hadn't been investigated by a documentary. And so that gave us together the idea to go and have a chat with Jack and his family, and to see if they'd be interested in a documentary about that side of Jack's life, incorporating, of course, other aspects of what the man himself was about. I knew there was a vast archive of material, because Jack had, even during his playing career, always loved the camera and had that sort of investigative streak in him as well that stretched beyond football. So I knew there was as a documentarian, you want that body of archive. I knew it existed. And so that was the initial reason for having the conversation with Jack and his son, John. And at that point also, we realized that Jack's dementia was fairly severe, and so that would also be an element of the film which would have to be incorporated. So that was how it all began, really.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mention Jack's dementia, because initially when I came to the film, I of course knew the story of the Ireland. I actually had been a Leeds United fan, and I can still to this day recite the 1971 football team. I won't do it now, but I was a little bit surprised with Jack's dementia, and then I thought, first of all, that it was maybe a little bit intrusive, but as the program wore on, I realized this is what it really gave the program depth, and kind of moved it from your average sports documentary to another level for me. And I was actually just talking to a colleague last night who told me that she wept watching the film. What were the decisions involved in deciding to cover this part of Jack's life? Was that a difficult decision for you, or?
Yeah, I think clearly what you do first is you liaise with the family, and John Charlton, his son, and Jack's wife Pat were always there when we were filming with Jack, and I think as well that they knew that for a lot of people who have families in similar situations, that this part of Jack's story would have a positive impact on them, because it obviously is something that more and more families are living with today. And whether or not you relate it to football, and in Jack's case, his family don't believe that it was connected to football, it's still a condition that afflicts many families. And so I think they felt that if Jack was to be part of the film in his towards the end of his life, which we were keen on, that showing him living with dementia and still continuing to live with dementia would be inspirational, and that's something as well that, talking to people involved with the Alzheimer's organizations who were party to this film as well, charities that benefited, they always want to put out that message that you can still continue to live a life with this condition, as hard as it is. And that obviously was something that I think in the course of the film, in the scenes that we filmed with Jack, pretty much chronologically from the time that we met through to close to the end of his life, we documented that in a way I think that was authentic, but also I think inspirational because it obviously showed a great deal of intimacy, and there was a great deal of personal moments involved in that. But also, you could still see at various times the great man still there, and I think that's obviously what many people took from the film too. It's obviously emotional and difficult to watch, but equally, I hoped, and we were keen to show that it was also inspiring to watch right till the very end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely the latter. It really rounds off the film, and I think, as you said, it will be inspiring for people to see that. When you were putting the film together, how did you work out the balance between the impact on the Irish football team, the impact on the Irish social renaissance, the two brothers, and then on top of it all, Ireland and England, the rivalry?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot to go at, as you say, and obviously that's always the challenge. I think you have to make choices. I was very keen, as I say, that I think that sense of what Ireland was when Jack arrived, and that sense of what Ireland became through that time, not just because of the football team, but obviously the impact that the football team had at that time was always going to be a central theme throughout the three acts of the film. And we managed as well to get archive, never before seen, which really, I think, substantiated that, which was filmed in just north of the border when Jack went on visits as Ireland manager. You had obviously material inside the Ireland camp that had never been seen before, just seeing him in action and what his style of management was. So I think it was always a key pillar for me, that impact on Ireland. In terms of his relationship with his brother, obviously that's a story that's been covered before in other films, but it was really important to get a sense of how the family felt about it and where the truth in that relationship lay. So that was a story that we covered in 3 or 4 chapters throughout the film, and obviously leading to the conclusion, the very sad realization revelation that Sir Bobby Charlton himself was living with dementia, and that was something that we broke in a way through the film, because we had to have that contact with Norma Charlton. The families themselves, Bobby and Jack's families, aren't as close, I think, as many would like, but that's just the way that many families are. But I think authenticating that story was also key. There being a lot of rumor around it over the last few years. And then in terms of just Jack's management style and the way in which his personality and persona inspired Ireland, that was always going to be something that offered a lot of humor. It offered a lot of personality, and that was essential, I think, to put across too. So you had so many aspects of his character and life to go at, and that was the challenge really when it came to picking a storyline that was also going to be clear to the viewer and satisfying to the viewer.
There was a great range of interviewees, and I liked you went from Roddy Doyle to Paul McGrath, who's someone who I haven't heard. How did you pick how did you find those people that were able to talk so passionately about Jack and what he'd done?
Yeah, we wanted the documentaries that I've made, I always like to be as close to the subject as possible. So that means you talk to the family, you talk to those that know Jack the best, and the same with that supporting cast, if you like. So those players that were right next to him throughout that time, like Niall Quinn, like Andy Townsend, those Irish people like Larry Mullen, like Roddy Doyle, who were part of that scene right at the front of it, and also knew Jack. So it was important for us to get an A-list cast of people who remembered that time and could articulate that time. So it was just a matter of aiming high. In terms of Larry Mullen, Andy Townsend's kept in touch with him. So Andy helped with that. The same with Niall Quinn. Roddy Doyle was convinced, I think, because of the subject matter that we were going at, and obviously Roddy as well wrote some literature at that very moment, The Van, for instance,
Yeah.
which became a film. So Roddy was right at the centre of what was happening to Ireland as a result of the football team. So he was always going to be an essential target for us, and spoke really well. And so I think it's always the idea that in the course of your background research, and this was one of the great things to do on this film, it wasn't, as you say, just football. In the course of your background research, you're reading books, you're listening to music, you're reviewing articles, you're looking at archive that isn't just football, and you're getting threads that you want only the best interviewees to discuss, and that's what we managed to do as well, also in the political area. So yeah, it was very important that the people who were there at the time, not people who were secondhand, but people there at the time authenticated it. Authenticated not just the story about Jack, but the story about Ireland.
What do you hope that people take away from the film?
Well, I hope that people take away, even those like yourself who knew Jack as a footballer, and as a player, and then as manager of Ireland, you take away something new. You have a definitive sense of this man and his life. I think that was our challenge. And it was a big challenge to take on in many ways, because so much has been written about Jack, and there have been television documentaries made about him. So I think all those that maybe felt they knew Jack, I hope that thanks to his family and the access that we gained, and the very personal scenes that we're able to film, along with the archive that had never been seen before, that you're experiencing something new. Whether you're a fan of the football team, you're seeing archive you've never seen before. Whether you're a fan of the man, you're seeing images you've never seen before of him. You're seeing him towards the end of his life. You're getting a sense of something new, definitive, and I think hopefully the sense of a very, very special individual. And also, I always try with my documentaries to get people emotionally engaged, because I think if you're not emotionally engaged, after half an hour you might switch off, or you might go away, and you might not continue to watch. So it was very important with this film, I think, having the assets that we had, having the contributors that we had, that it would be an emotionally powerful film, and that's on the whole the feedback that we've been getting, and I hope that's for the right reasons.
And what about yourself personally? Would you have any learnings coming away from making this film? Was there things that surprised you?
Yeah, I think always. I think that's part of the process that as a documentary maker you have to go through. You have an idea, you have a structure laid out often as to how you want to tell a story, but then you discover things. So I think just the sense, I think maybe what surprised me most of all, I think, was just how straightforward Jack was, and what you saw was what you got. You know, this was a guy who was incredibly authentic and did it his way, and you know, there was no edge to him. Yeah, he could be stubborn, he could be difficult. He is a very proud man. But also, I think, a hugely intelligent man as well. Somebody, I think, who'd been underestimated in terms of his ideas tactically, in terms of football. I think he was underestimated, what he did, how he changed the game at that point with that Ireland team. And I think this was a great leader. He had all the great qualities that you see in leaders, whether they're in football or not, in management, in politics, in life. He had those wonderful qualities. A charisma, and you learn that, I think, as you go through a film, and you become associated with that character in a way maybe you didn't expect, which was in this film, in terms of this film, very exciting.
Were there any memorable moments in the making of the film for you, looking back?
Well, one of the most memorable moments involved Australia, actually. Because the footage that you see in the film of Jack and the players, the island players at the team hotel, singing after they've lost to Italy, having that party, which was just incredible footage, was footage that we'd been told existed by John Charlton, that there was a camera with the Ireland team during the competition, during the World Cup in 1990. So as soon as we heard that, we wanted to try and track it down. I was told the person who filmed that footage was an Australian, Craig Johnston. You'll know the name, the footballer who came to play for Middlesbrough and Liverpool and got his first break under Jack. And Craig Johnston was living in Los Angeles at that point when we first got in touch about 3 years ago. He said, yeah, I'll have a look through my attic and see where it is. It was only once he'd moved to Sydney, 18 months or so ago, that we managed to, we sent our producer, Pete Thomas, out to Sydney to look through his garage, that we managed to track down that footage. So that was a massively important moment, wonderful moment for us in terms of making the film, to see this footage, which obviously when Jack sings the Bladen Races, it's with you when you watch the film, but then when you see Jack in the final scene, singing it as well and remembering the song, that was very, very a great moment for us when it came to making the film, when you thread past and present together. And so Australia played a part in that.
That was a beautiful piece. I do remember that. And I suppose one of the things for me, my dad was a big Gaelic football administrator and player, and it wasn't very complimentary about soccer. There was a lot of rivalry, but there was something about Jack Charlton that just my dad was a big fan, and that ability that he had to just cross boundaries and to break down boundaries. That was wonderful. It was great to see.
I think on that note, I think that plays into this idea of why Jack worked for Ireland, because he was straightforward. He was to the point. He wasn't this posh Englishman. He wasn't this politician type that so many Irish people had foisted upon them in the north or the south, 70s, 80s. Jack was in so many ways similar, and that enabled him that straightforwardness, just to cross barriers and prejudice, and that was absolutely, I think, one of the reasons why he was so much in love with Ireland at a certain point, and vice versa.
There's a lovely note to end on, Gabriel. I know that your film's going to make a lot of people really happy, especially us in lockdown who are missing the stories about home. It's going to bring a lot of joy to people's hearts, and thanks a million for your work on the film, and thanks a million for taking the time to talk to us tonight.
Thank you very much, and best wishes to all of you.
Cheers, all the best. Thank you very much. Bye bye.